We're still talking with Maggie Oliver. She's a former detective constable with Greater Manchester Police. She resigned from that role back in 2012 to whistleblow on the Rochdale grooming, let's call them what they are, rape gang case. Maggie, thanks for joining us and staying with us over that break. Let's talk about Keir Starmer and his role. Now, he was head of the Crown Prosecution Service as Director of Public Prosecutions from 2008 to 2013. He was involved, you know, in some of the prosecutions in terms of pushing a prosecution with the then Chief Prosecutor Nazir Afzal himself. Perhaps easier for him to do it at the time, given that he was himself Muslim. He got an awful lot of hate from some people in the Muslim community, but he pushed these prosecutions. Nigel Farage has been criticised by Elon Musk, but also so has the Prime Minister, so has Jess Phillips, the current Home Office Minister. Elon Musk called Jess Phillips an evil witch on Twitter last week, and a rape genocide apologist, said she'd be put in prison. Keir Starmer was asked about that at a speech he's just given in Surrey. He said, I think most people are more interested in what's going to happen to the NHS, frankly, than what's happening on Twitter. He said, child sexual exploitation is utterly sickening, and for many years, too many victims have been completely let down by perverse ideas about community relations. They've not been listened to and have not been heard. What do you make of Keir Starmer's role?
I feel he's extremely responsible for what's happened. You know, I know the Rochdale case was under his watch. So I think it's fair to bring it into the specifics of that case, because I don't want to talk generally. I resigned because I did not agree with the decision-making on the Rochdale case, and Keir Starmer was Director of Public Prosecution. Nazir Afzal was the head of the CPS, or the Chief Prosecutor in Manchester. You know, they were the ones responsible for not charging Adil Khan with rape of a 13-year-old child when we had a fetus. Yeah. They criminalised a young victim. They charged most of the men with trafficking. They were guilty of multiple rape, mass rape. So his judgment, for me, was completely slewed. I also know that he was the Director of Public Prosecutions when a circular was sent out to all police forces not to investigate these crimes because the children were making lifestyle choices. So
even though he didn't write that himself, he's often claimed since running for Prime Minister and since being Prime Minister that, you know, he stands on his record as, you know, as Director of Public Prosecutions. This is what he achieved. But during his time, a circular went out saying basically these underage girls, they want to be raped by these men as old as their dads.
100%. And for me, Julie, the book stops at the top. And you've just mentioned Jess Phillips. Now, she is being made a scapegoat of.
Yeah, I think so.
It's not her. This is not her responsibility. You know, this goes way, way back, way beyond her time.
Yeah. And she has been a long-term campaigner against, you know, violence against women and girls.
And that detracts from the bigger picture, because this is a whole army of people who have failed children. I mean, I remember Sarah Champion in Rotherham. I've met her many times. She was trying her absolute best.
She was the Labour MP, wasn't she?
She was the Labour MP, but she was sacked from a job for daring to speak the truth.
And Anne Cryer, another MP, spoke out, was criticised.
You know what you just said, Julia, about money and political parties. I've started my own charity, the Maggie Oliver Foundation. I do not take a penny from the government, from the authorities, because I want to speak the truth. Yeah. I do not want that connected with money. But every one of these politicians, they are controlled by a whip. There are good people in politics. There were good people in the police, but we are at the mercy of those at the top. Yeah. And unless you're prepared to do what I did, give your job up, give your home up, lose your life, your mental health, you should not have to make that choice when you are fighting for children who are being raped on a daily basis. But I just want to say that we at the foundation, we are building bridges with police forces. There are some good people, and I would include Greater Manchester Police in that. We've got some good contacts there. Things are by no means all hunky-dory, but communication is better. There is more public awareness, and it's a lot harder to bury these things. Yeah. But I do think we need we need an honesty and an openness to accept the facts
that has been happening. But here's the thing. I mean, the battle went on for about 10 years about, was this effectively a race hate crime? And again, if it was a bunch of white men doing this to Muslim children, Muslim girls, I think we all know that A, it would have been prosecuted, and B, it would have been regarded as a race hate crime, which to a certain extent is what it is. Now, you mentioned the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse, that report in 2022 by Professor Alexis Jay, and pointing out, look, although technically, yes, we've had a report into this, it didn't really go into detail. It certainly didn't mention some of the Rochdale, in Telford, I think, and Rotherham, they weren't even gone into. There have been some independent reports sort of, into those local areas. Do you think it is time now for a proper independent report specifically into these rape grooming gangs?
What I would say, Julia, is with ICSA, with the National Abuse Inquiry, not one of 20 recommendations have been implemented.
Yeah.
We had £100 million, 7 years, a complex report. The grooming gang organised network strand was minute. What I would say is that it's okay to announce a public inquiry, but who is leading that inquiry?
Yeah.
What do they want to see?
Who would you trust to lead that inquiry, given we've seen such abject failure on the behalf of so many different organisations and individuals?
I would want it to be somebody who has no vested interest, so not a politician, no party political person, the strings not being pulled by those who have an axe to grind. So it must be people, it must be victims and survivors. It must be people like me who understand this inside out. I'm not just saying me, I'm not saying that. Somebody who's lived and breathed this, who doesn't want to coat things over, who wants to get to the real truth, to understand why. If people from other cultures are going to come to the UK, they have to integrate, they have to follow our laws. And our laws say you can't have sex with a 12, 13-year-old child. And I'm sorry, the law is meant to be equal. Yeah. We are meant to operate with integrity, with fairness, with, the law is not to choose. We prosecute a 24-year-old boy for having sex with a 15-year-old child, but we don't prosecute a 60-year-old imam in a mosque. I'm sorry, it might be an uncomfortable truth, and it is not a racist comment to say that.
Absolutely not. Just finally, Maggie, and you've just done such amazing work on this, and I do. A lot of people want to put the tuppence worth on social media. They want to have a go at this person, that one. If you want to do something to actually help these girls, give some money to the Maggie Oliver Foundation, a charity actually helping these girls. In reality, there'll be girls right now. There'll be families of girls right now. We know there've been cases where fathers have gone literally into a rape den. That's what they were, rape houses, to try and rescue their daughter, and they've ended up being arrested themselves. I mean, it's just extraordinary what's happened. There'll be families of girls might be listening right now. What would you say to them?
To the families, if they need help, come to the foundation. We are there to offer emotional support and legal advocacy. And my value and the value of my amazing team of 40 now at the foundation is that we join the dots. It's not my place to tell their stories, but we spot the patterns. We are a voice alongside them, not instead of them. Yeah. And on the ICSA inquiry, the voices of the victims were squeezed out. You were quite right, Julia. Rotherham, Rochdale, Oxford, Telford, Huddersfield, all those towns and cities were blocked from that inquiry, as was I, as were other non-institutional experts. Why is that? Because they do not have any intention of getting to the truth. I want to see somebody who will, and it won't be a politician, and it won't be a member of the establishment. It will be somebody that the victims trust, that has got no vested interest to cover up the truth. I've lost everything, but I am proud that I stood by what was true. The country knows that now. The blinkers are off in the country. We are still fighting the officials who continue to pretend this is not the problem it is. Awareness will bring change, and we shouldn't be splitting it into local problems.
This is on a national scale. I mean, it involves huge numbers of people. Maggie, we'll have to leave it there. Maggie Oliver, thank you so much. I'd like to point out she's joining us while she's away on holiday as well. So even, you're always giving up your time, no matter what, to try and speak out on this issue. You have just been the most amazing hero, fighter for these girls who had nobody in the authorities, who literally were paid to protect them, acting on their behalf. But former Detective Constable at Greater Manchester Police, whistleblower on the Rochdale grooming gang case, rape gang case. Maggie Oliver, thank you so much for joining us, and I'm sure that's echoed by all of my audience as well. Lots of people getting in touch on the phone line, so 0344 499 1000.